All right, so I'm going to tell you another story about my grandpa. And when I tell you my grandpa loved my grandma, he loved my grandma. I hope that someday on this earth I find somebody that can treat me like they treated each other. They had their issues, they would have arguments silently, never in front of us, but at the end of the day, they had each other's back at all costs. So, my grandmother would tell you she was the runt of the litter. She had a lot of health issues, never slowed her down, regardless of what she'd been through. I've seen that woman have surgery on a Monday, come home on a Tuesday. You'd go visit her Wednesday morning, she's in there sweeping. And you're like, Grandma, you got stitches. What are you doing? Someone's got to clean this floor, someone's got to mop this place. That's Grandma's determination. So, they're married, they have kids, life goes on, farming, everything. And in 1981, Grandma starts having, you used to call it, I guess, angina, where your arms are hurting from having heart problems or whatever. She goes to the doctor, gets checked out. And they say, hey, you've got 4 blocked arteries leading into your heart. She's like, okay, so we're going to have to do a quad bypass because you've got some high blockage numbers. Okay. So they do all kinds of stuff, put her under, put her to sleep, and when they're going to do the bypass, they have to do vein cropping. They have to go find veins normally in your legs. That's where the big veins are at, and they'll use them to build like bypasses around these clogged arteries so you don't have a heart attack. So the blood still flows through your body. So they cut Grandma from her wrist, center of the chest, little ways up her neck, down to her crotch, down to both ankles. They didn't count the number of stitches, they counted it in measurements, how long the stitches ran for. She had 9 yards of stitches in her body. She wakes up the next morning, she expects the surgery's done. They basically tell her that she has a vein disease, her veins are not farmable or recoverable. They expect that she has 90 days to live, and after the 90 days, her heart will finally have its blockages, have a massive heart attack, and she'll pass away. So she goes home. She's in a lot of pain. Number one, she can't do a whole lot. Her heart's not strong enough, and with the blockages, and she's got all of these stitches. So Grandpa has the tub taken out of her master bedroom. He puts in a special tub with like a whirlpool jet assembly thing on it. It was like on a track, kind of made into the pool, and it would whirlpool jet into that tub. And they would put medicine in it and soak her and try to help heal up faster. He'd get up in the morning, he'd put her in that tub. He'd pick her up, he'd pick her up physically, put her in the tub, let her soak for however many minutes she wanted to soak. He'd pick her back up, dry her off, take her to the kitchen, bring her food. He'd make her breakfast, put her back in bed or sit her in the chair, go work, lunch, pick her back up, put her back in that tub, feed her lunch, go work in the afternoon, get back in the afternoon, put her back in at nighttime, feed her supper, and this went on while she tried to heal up. He tried and he tried and he tried to heal her up, but Grandma has 2 spots on all of those stitches that will not heal. No matter what they do, no matter what type of medicine they're trying to put on it, it keeps staying infected. My grandfather's mother was like the local area kind of doctor in the country. She was, and I gotta confirm this, but I've had multiple people tell me, she was the first lady ever allowed to attend Campbell University. She came from a family that had money, and they couldn't leave a daughter in those days land because it would be taken by a man if they got married and got divorced. So her father thought the best thing to give his child wealth was to give her education. So he gets her in at Campbell. She gets educated. That lady, on a side note, in the 50s would not shake your hand or touch anything unless she had a white glove on, and she informed everybody it's because there was germs in the world, and no one had dare heard about a germ in the country where we grew up. But when she passes, Grandpa has her black medical bag, like the country doctor bag, sitting in a special place in the house. Grandma is exhausted. She's tired of trying all this medicine to get her arms healed up and her leg healed up. She says, TH, go get your mama's bag. So Grandpa goes and gets it. I don't know what for. Grandma, his mama's been dead 12 years when this happens. She opens up the bag and she finds a tube of black salve. Save, some people call it. It's supposed to draw out infection if you have a bad wound. She says, TH, that's my grandpa's name, would you be scared to put this stuff on me? Grandpa said, well, all the other stuff they gave you is not working. You should try it. So she takes that 12-year-old, it's probably a 20-year-old tube, who knows, rubs it on the two spots that won't heal up, goes to bed that night. Wakes up the next morning, and there's like 3 white things sticking up out of that sore on her arm, and 3 more things sticking up out of her leg. It's strings out of a cotton gauze. When they sewed her up, they literally sewed a roll of gauze up accidentally in her arm and in her leg, and that's why they couldn't get it to heal. And Grandpa's friggin' livid, okay? And have to deal with the repercussions of that. But let's go to the next story. So Grandma's weak. She can't do anything, and Grandpa was scared that she'd give up, you know, or she'd be so weak she wouldn't do nothing. So he took and mounted 2 metal, like the little metal jugs, like a citronella candle on a back porch, like on a deck would be. He found 2 of those jugs. He mounts pulleys in the ceiling above her lazy boy chair, and he would put sand in it and make her slowly, as she could heal up them arms, start working them buckets and make her work harder and harder. He put more sand in it, building her strength up. Now this is in 81 and 82. By the time so let's say by 87 and 1988, I'm helping Grandpa on the farm. I'm a little runny kid, but I'm everywhere. I'm into everything. By then, my grandma is walking 6 miles a day. So she just kept building herself up, getting stronger and stronger. They never did anything to her heart. So 1991 comes, Grandma falls shopping, hurts her knee. She goes to the doctor to get checked for her knee because she wants it fixed, because she's got to cook for all of us grandkids. She needs help. They then tell her, Miss Johnson, we're seeing something really wrong with your heart. We think you need to go to Cape Fear Valley and get checked out. She goes and gets checked out. They see her medical history, and they're like, oh, we ain't touching you, because not with all the stuff you've had. So they're scared she's going to have a heart attack, and they have determined that those 4 blockages in her heart, her body has built capillaries complete around both sides of each one of those blockages, and somehow she has self-healed and made up about 80% of her blood flow that she needs. So they catheterize her, they go into the vein in her leg, so in case something happens, they can inject medicine into her heart to help her if something goes wrong. And they're going to fly her to Duke to be checked out by the doctors up there. While she's in midair, the guy's doing the heart catheterization and moves his hand wrong something, and he's almost to the point he needs to be, but the end of that catheter swoops through the capillaries, cutting off all of the blood flow to one part of her heart. She has 6 heart attacks, one right behind another, before they can land at Duke. Grandpa gets there. He tries to find out where she is. They basically put her in triage, realized they couldn't do nothing, put her in a room, then they send Grandpa in. Grandpa gets there, and he can't hear now because he's got these big ears and these big hearing aids, and he's trying to lip read all he can, and he understands now that she's got 4 hours maybe, and she probably won't be here in the morning. And they're telling him this at like 9, 10 o'clock that night. Grandma's out. She's been out for hours. And so anyway, Grandma then tells me that the next morning she wakes up in Duke. And when she does, she doesn't understand what's happening, but she must have been in an accident because her hand is broken. Hand's hurting real bad. And said that she slowly gets where she can open her eyes up because she's super medicined, or doped up for the medicine. And she looks down to try to see her hand. And when she looks down to see her hand, the reason it's hurting so bad is because that man has been on his knees on the side of that bed since 10 o'clock that night, squeezing that hand just as tight as he could, crying, because he didn't want to lose his woman. That's tough on me. So anyway, he sees that she's awake, and he's so happy because God knows he loved her. And she's like, what's going on? And he's like, oh, they've done something. They say you only got 4 hours to live. And she looked at him and said, whatever, TH. She said, they gave me 90 days in 81. That was like 12 years ago. I'll be home in a few days. And she was. She actually told him I'll be home in a week. It took her 2 weeks to get home. So before she comes home in 2 weeks, they're doing something and they changed out an IV spot on her. Nurse puts in the IV, goes to put medicine in it or something, and somehow the nurse pricks herself with the needle after grandmother was picked with a needle. Now, when grandma had all the surgery in 81, she had to get a blood transfusion because they cut her so much. That was before they tested blood for obvious things. And so in 91, the doctors just order an HIV test because that nurse needs to have a clear conscience that she doesn't have anything. And there is a chance grandma could have had something. So they ordered a test. Grandpa's power of attorney, he has to sign off. So they just come to him and say, hey, you need to sign this. And he's reading paper and trying to watch them lips while he's trying to read the paper. And the only thing he can read on that paper is HIV test. And he looks up and he says, what's this for? And they said, don't worry about it. We got to have it. And so Grandpa signs off. And the more we think about it, the better he's getting. Goes in and sees Grandma. And she's like, what's going on? He's like, hey, I'm real tired. It's been a rough day. I got to go home. I got something I got to do at home. I'm going to go home. I'll come right back. She's like, oh, TH, you've been up here too much. Stay home for a day. Get your rest. I'm not going anywhere. Got a few more days up here. No, I'll be back, he says. He goes home. Instead of stopping at home, he drives all the way past home to Fayetteville to her normal doctor. And while he's up there with her normal doctor, he walks right into the front door. He's mad, and they realize something's a little off because my grandpa's jovial. I get some of my mouthiness from him, but he ain't real mouthy. Long story short, he goes into the doctor's office without really asking too many people, and he looks at the front desk and says, where's Garrison? That was her doctor. And they said, well, he's in the back examining the patient. Grandpa doesn't ask. He doesn't ask. He walks right down the hallway from the front office, and on either side are these examination rooms. And he just goes to every one, opens the door up, nobody, shuts it. Goes to the next one, opens it up, nobody, shuts it. He told me that he had saw some old dude in there naked, and he was like, ugh, shuts the door. Gets to the next one, Dr. Garrison's in there examining somebody, and Garrison doesn't know he's there. So he turns around, and he's a little surprised. He's like, TH, what are you doing here? He said, me and you got to talk. So Garrison goes, okay, well, just go to this room right here. Let me get done with this guy, and I'll go talk to you. So Grandpa walks to the room, and he's mad. Garrison thinks that Grandpa's just upset because maybe Grandma has passed away at the hospital, and they haven't told him because Garrison's in the middle of all these exams. And so he gets in and he goes, it's okay, TH, just tell me what happened. Grandpa, at 74 years old, grabs this man with his white jacket and pushes him up against the wall. Garrison's going, whoa, whoa, whoa. He said, TH, what is it? He looks at him and he says, she's my wife. She's only ever been my wife. She's only going to be my wife. If you want to call my wife a prostitute to my face, you going to call it to my face, Doc. I ain't putting up with this. Garrison has no idea what's going on. And he's like, whoa, 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 man. So he gets Grandpa to calm down and sit down. He goes and makes some phone calls, and it makes sense to him what's happened. Now Duke tells him, well, nurse pricked herself, blah, blah, blah. So he comes in and explains it to Grandpa. He's like, TH, this is why. She had a blood transfusion, accident happens, we got to make sure that the nurse is safe. He said, I know your wife's got nothing wrong with her. I've examined her 1,000 times, but that nurse needs some mental, she needs, some reassurance. Grandpa kind of realizes the error of his ways, but he's pretty hard-nosed. So he says, Garrison, what all these doctors you guys got, and all the doctors that do, so smart, all these years of education, you would think they could look at somebody with as big of ears as I got in these hearing aids and realize, hey, maybe I need to explain it to this guy. Obviously, he can't hear real good. So Grandpa just leaves. And as he leaves, he tells Garrison, he says, I'm not being here, you ain't seen me, and don't you ever tell her I've been here. He's like, no problem, TH. He leaves, whatever. A few months later, Grandma comes in for a regular checkup, and the ladies at the front office have talked about this. Grandpa's waiting for Grandma in the waiting room. They proceed to tell Grandma that they wish they could find a man that loved them as much as he loved her. And Grandma goes, what are you talking about? And And they proceed to tell her, well, he came up here to whip the doctor's butt, you know, and he's 74 years old because of the HIV test. And Grandma is livid. She's embarrassed. So anyway, Grandpa goes back there to get her and walk her out because she walks real slow. And he always held her hand, and the true definition of chivalry if I've ever seen it. He goes in there and he says, hey, babe, you ready to go? She said, we gonna talk. And he looked directly at Garrison and is like, you told her. And Garrison says, I'm not saying anything. So anyway, he would fight for her. If he said something about her, you shut up and listen. If you decided you'd say anything, whether it's a grandkid going to sass her or, you know, like, sometimes when Grandma wanted something, she wanted it right then because that's how he operated. You know, he gave it to her right then. Like, go get that piece of trash out of the ditch. Go cut the okra at the garden. Cut my grass right now. And sometimes Grandpa'd be worked up because we're working, we're doing tobacco, we're exhausted. And he would get away from her and he'd be like, man, I swear that woman sometimes don't know what all I've got going on. And I go, yeah, Grandpa, she don't know. And he'd be like, don't you talk about your grandma that way, boy. That's my woman. I go, yeah, I'm sorry, Grandpa. I'm sorry. But he showed me what it was like to really love somebody. And I'm blessed to have had him in my life.